Hello and welcome back to Cityworks Connect episode 4. I am Cindy Curletti, a manager for the Cityworks marketing and event team. Joining me today is Matt Harman, a business development manager with Cityworks, as well as Ryan Harris, who is a project manager, and Matt Ponder, who is a customer success manager, both with Cityworks. Joining us today is Geyer and Duane Treadon with the City of Thomasville, Georgia. Thank you for joining us today as we talk with the City of Thomasville and some of the things that they have done with the Cityworks software. But before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I need to cover. You can locate these recordings on our website at cityworks.com under the resources tab, or search YouTube under Cityworks. And I also need to provide a quick disclaimer that the information provided here is intended for information purposes only and may not be incorporated into any contract. So Matt, with that, I will let you take it from here.
All right, thanks Cindy, and thanks everybody for joining us in this episode. We haven't done one in a few weeks. We've had vacations and so forth, but we're excited to have Duane and Eve talk to us about what's going on in the City of Thomasville, and then also Ryan Harris, who was the project manager that helped them implement Cityworks, both AMS and PLL, and then Matt Ponder, who is their current customer success manager. So Eve, and let's start with you. Will you just tell us what your role is at the city, and kind of, I love your background too, so go into a little bit about, how you ended up at the City of Thomasville.
I ended up at the City of Thomasville with job opportunity for my husband. My background, though, is the military in communications. And so I brought a lot of problem solving and process management type of techniques and background to the city. And I was lucky and grateful to land a job here. And I took on the role to be the project manager for the implementation of Cityworks, which Duane and Drew Wharton had started looking at earlier to move the city towards a work order and a work order management system as an extension of the GIS system that the city had just implemented about 10 years ago. So that's my background with that.
All right, perfect. Yeah, Thomasville. So Thomasville in the Cityworks culture is kind of one of those special cities, because for years, if you worked at Cityworks, for the last 20 years, you know what Thomasville is. That was our demo environment. So the fictional city that we used for a long time to show Cityworks was called Thomasville, after one of our longtime employees, Steve Thomas. So when you guys reached out to us to, with some interest in purchasing Cityworks, I think it was Dave Bramwell who was like, hey, we've got Thomasville is actually after us, the real Thomasville. So that was kind of a fun, Cityworks lore anyways. So you guys are down in southern Georgia, population about 18,000. And Duane, how about you? What's your role at the city? Kind of talk a little bit more about your involvement in what you do. And I know you're involved in a lot of the GIS stuff outside of just the city, kind of regionally as well.
Yes. Well, I'm the director of GIS for the City of Thomasville, and I've had this position since 2012 when we actually started GIS as an organizational kind of tool. Prior to that, each department was doing its own GIS work and had its own GIS people, and we kind of brought together under one organizational umbrella to coordinate all those efforts so that we weren't duplicating work processes. We had cases where, the engineering department had their parcel layer. I had my parcel layer. I was in the planning department at the time. I had my parcel layer, and nothing was matching up. We wanted to get everything out of the silos and all the data into one structured environment so that everybody was looking at the same data. So when we came to meetings, we were using the same data and not different data with it.
Yeah, that single system of record, we say that phrase a lot. And when you get into an organization where there are disparate data sources, it can be challenging, and that's great. So you brought it all together. And then one of the things that we like to do at Cityworks, when we get contacted and interested city or utility that's looking at procuring Cityworks, right from the beginning, we try to create a culture of success. And that's primarily been my job over the last 10 years, is just business development and sales. And so working with you two and Eve, especially as you guys were investigating Cityworks, it was a treat because you guys were organized, you had goals. And plus Thomasville is such a kind of a quaint little city down in southern Georgia. It was fun to visit. But ultimately we decided on, or when I was explaining the different implementation options, we offer what we call guided implementation services. And so we're going to cover that in a little bit, but it all kind of funnels into this, right? Where, just Duane, like you were saying, you come in and a lot of where organizations start is just developing that culture, that organization, that structure. And then we try to help facilitate that and grow up through that. And that's why we have our implementation team and then Matt Ponder. So Matt, as a customer success manager, you take over the project about the time they go live. So tell us a little bit about your impressions with Thomasville as that transition took place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started working with Thomasville probably about 2 years ago, and I had taken over as the customer success manager for them from a gentleman named Larry Selene, who's still with our team, but we kind of shifted regions. And right off the bat, I was very impressed by how involved they were with me and wanting to get my feedback. I typically have 20 to 30 minute introduction calls with clients that I start working with. And these are brief, just introductory calls. Hey, this is my role at Cityworks as a customer success manager. What are your goals? What are you looking to achieve? And Eve had sent over some spreadsheets and some things for me to look over on the first introductory call. And I remember that call that typically lasts 20 to 30 minutes was well over 2 hours, and that was with I know the building official and Duane and several other people were on that call. And so just right off the bat was very impressed by how involved they were in the process of Cityworks and its evolution in the city.
Right. Yeah. So Eve, when you guys kicked off the project, and so I'm going to go to this next slide because there's a number of ways that you can implement Cityworks. Okay, we have a business partner network. We have our Cityworks implementation services. And so ultimately, as we went through that, you guys settled on this. And so here's a couple key elements of those services. So it's a little bit smaller scope. So you guys started with PLL. And then it's lower cost, right? You're not going out and looking for a turnkey implementer to manage everything start to finish. It's really a collaborative knowledge transfer between our project manager and you guys. And so talk a little bit about, with Ryan, those first interactions and how this project went about, because, ultimately it's gone throughout your whole city. And so give us some input on that.
So I remember before Ryan came in that we knew we were going to get 5 workflows, and we wanted to know kind of more about what that would be, and we asked some questions. And so we actually kind of mimicked a full-blown permit process for big commercial development, so that the project team, which the core was me, Duane, and Andrew Wharton, could help the users better when Ryan came down. Because when Ryan came down, when we gave him a workflow, it went from, I want to make a cake, to it's done, to, okay, do you turn left here? And we're like, what? So mimicking the restaurant development on a brand new plot of land, new building, really helped us learn what the building department did, helped us understand what the engineer did in the permitting process and the land development process, what the zoning administrator did. and helped us understand those key points in the process, which later became our milestones to move us and the customer through the process and not get too far ahead of ourselves, but be able to give enough, be open enough to not hinder anything by having too many milestones. So that really helped us doing that. And then when Ryan came in, he understood our goals and taking small manageable chunks, getting something working, even if it's not perfect. And when we started getting wrapped around the axle about, well, it's not this type of yes, it's this, he'd remind us, like, let's get it done. We're going to start using it and we can change it later.
Yeah, so an interesting point too with Thomasville is at the time, conventional wisdom, well, in the first place, we didn't have a lot of clients, both AMS and PLL clients. And at the time, conventional wisdom was do the AMS side first and then do PLL after, because PLL is more, there's a lot more to it and it's a different animal, but it's you do it differently. So Thomasville at the time was the first client, and Matt, you can correct me, I think this is the case, that actually did PLL first and then AMS. And so that was interesting because, conventional wisdom, we're like, we don't want to do it that way. And it actually worked great for Thomasville. And we can talk about, the AMS side when we get to that point. But yeah, it went, it went very smoothly as a result of that. And I've always thought that was interesting and a kind of a good shout out to their guys there that were able to, do that. So.
Yeah. Drew and Duane went to PLL training pretty quickly too, which I really think helped. It's not something we waited to do later. So there was a lot of, between that training and then Ryan, Drew especially picked up on the development pretty quickly, developing the database later for us when we built out the rest of our cases and workflows.
And that's why I'd say
that's key, right? Because Ryan, part of it was just, AMS was really comfortable and we had a lot of projects and PLL was a growing part of our business. Mm-hmm. And so doing that first, I think it again, the willingness of Thomasville, and we kind of learn together. Like that's the great part of the collaborative effort of a good project, is that learning and knowledge transfer between the organizations. So sorry, I think Duane, were you going to add something there?
I was going to add on, kind of with that is the knowledge we gained by doing it through a guided process instead of having a third-party implementer coming in, really helped us to understand the system and understand our workflows. There was things that we thought we knew how we were doing things, and yet when we really got into it and then working with Ryan and kind of hashing out how that workflow really does work, we realized, oh, we didn't really realize how it went in the first place. So it helped us understand our workflows a lot better and understand the system a lot better, so that now we can do internal self-support. We don't have to rely on a third-party implementer to come in and change a workflow for us, or fees or other items like that. And I think that was, to me, was the biggest surprise that I got, because in the original, I kind of wanted to get set it up, go fast, and go live fast. And of course, the system going this guided way does take a lot longer. But in the end result, I think we end up with a lot better product in the end and a lot better organizational mindset in utilizing it.
Yeah, well, I think, the time is always interesting because two key things, right? You guys had to have people that were available, right? Internal resources that could actually support the project. But then, us delivering 5 workflows, and then you guys configuring additional workflows on top of that, but it does create that solid foundation for the city to really understand how Cityworks functions. In fact, Ryan, I think you were joking that was it Duane or Andrew? He may know the system better than you do.
Yeah, Andrew he definitely, I'll go down and say, especially during the admin training, especially on the AMS portion, I'd be like, yeah, you do it this way, train him. He'd be like, no, you don't. And then I'd be like, oh, yeah, you're right. So why am I even here? Yeah, you know this. So
yeah, we like to set it up and then we kind of become the safety net, right? Through good training and key workflows, and then Ryan and our other PMs are kind of that safety net of, well, maybe look at it that way and so forth. So so Eve, one other thing we talked about while we were reviewing what we might do on this episode was there's this tendency for public organizations, maybe any organization, to get a little paralyzed and overwhelmed thinking about how they even get started and what just kind of the, I guess, the stress of knowing they need to change but not quite knowing how to change. And I loved your take on that. Just so tell us what you said in our last phone call while we were prepping.
Oh my gosh, what did I say?
What did you say? No, it was they tend to overthink, right? They instead of just jumping in and being willing to adapt and being willing to just get something started, they tend to hold themselves up.
Yeah, I think a lot of, some people want something perfect. I want it to work a certain way and it has to be this way. And if it's not, I can't do anything with it. And, we just kind of felt that we weren't going to get a system implemented until we waited for everything to be perfect, or even fully move from one platform to a next. So the 5 workflows, getting them done and getting our engineers and building department and zoning administrators start using it really helped to alleviate some of that stress of thinking you have to wait until your software is a certain way. Like, we had full confidence in the software and its features and the capabilities. And it was just a matter of us getting over that hurdle of, okay, it's, we can figure out our business processes, and the system that we build together is going to be perfect between the business processes and the software. The software can't do everything for you, and we really stress that with everyone. I don't know.
Yeah, I would add on to that, kind of what Eve's talking about with the not being perfect, is that a lot of people, they want the turnkey that is going to do 100% of what they plan for that software to do. And if you ever wait for that 100%, you're probably never going to make it. So get it to do some things and then start building upon it. So when we started, it wasn't doing every single workflow. We still had some dual systems in the beginning, but it was allowing time for people to get comfortable with the software, to understand it, and at the same time say, oh, we told you that this is the way the workflow goes, but we realized, can you do it this way? Because we think this would be better. And we were able to make those changes and build towards our 100%. And it takes a mindset, because that's an organizational view, is that we want something to work 100% as soon as we say go live with it. And so that was definitely a change in our mindset, saying it's okay if it's not 100%. Let's get it 25%, and then next year, phase 2, we'll get another 25% and work towards it.
Right. Well, and a lot of times you don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? You cross that bridge and you have to adjust. You have to be adaptable. Yeah, that's a great culture. That's a great mindset, and it just emphasizes. Sometimes I'll equate this maturity curve and on any technology project, but then even other areas of our lives and our businesses. It's kind of like the law of physics, right? We can't skip over a step. We have to go through this as an organization, and being adaptable and willing to risk going live where things may not be exactly how we envision them to be, but we're risking to make that leap is really cool. Okay, so you guys wrapped up the PLL project, and then you came back and you did the AMS, implemented the asset management system. And so, Ryan, maybe you can tell us as their PM, and I know, Eve, when we were talking, you were like, hey, we really want Ryan to come back and do this. And I think Ryan really wanted to go back down there, not only to help you, but also to take some backwood Jeep riding with Duane.
Yeah.
So,
sure. Yeah, we went back down to do the AMS side, and yeah, I was excited to go back because you know, A, yeah, Thomasville is a great little town. B, you know, they have very interesting operation there. They have a lot of their own utilities. So they do their own, you know, internet and all kinds of stuff that's not typical. So that's very interesting from a AMS side. But then, yeah, we got that added bonus. So when I went down there on one trip, one of our PMs came down with me and Gunner. And yeah, so Duane took me and Gunner jeeping out in the back roads of the Georgia country there. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, that's pretty lucky.
I'm seeing cotton.
yeah.
Yeah, that's lucky there. I've been golfing on a couple of projects, but I never got to go do some jeeping. So good for you guys.
I say that Ryan turned a favor when I was out for the conference back in December, and we did some hiking. So it's a good trade-off.
Yeah, hiking up in Utah in the snow, right?
Oh, man, I don't get it in Georgia. So where else can I go?
Yeah, perfect. So AMS, you roll that out, which is really cool. You got PLL, you got AMS, and you're moving along. But one thing that I think still, about how long ago did you guys go live on AMS?
That was in 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in 18, and that was just with our water, sewer, and gas department. So again, we small manageable chunks. So we started with our water, gas, and sewer, like I said. Not our public works department yet. Ryan came down a third time to do our public. Here's our train that comes around this time all the time. So Ryan came down a third time to get our public works department started, because our goal for 2019 was to be off of this public kind of it's not 311, but a public reporting portal. We wanted to streamline a bit and not pay redundant services in software for, you know, the same software capabilities. And so again, just a chunk at a time that's manageable for us, based on the staff that we had and what we could do. So the water and sewer and gas department actually have quite a bit of data now. And just from a purely, you know, I remember Matt talking about, you know, moving from a work order management system to an asset management. And so, you know, pretty soon we're going to be able to go to do some analytics now with them. As we start to grow, we didn't initially implement the condition as well, maybe as we should have, but that's something we're starting to look at now. And so moving and growing into asset management is something we're going to be able to do pretty soon here. So again, you know, setting some goals, start using a computerized work order management system instead of paper, which they were using a lot. So yeah, I mean, you know, operations guys, they seem to really like it, and they can see the work their guys need to do and keep track. And, you know, we're starting to see, you know, a little bit of trends. I'm going to the same spot all the time. What's going on? So
Another piece that, Matt, I don't want me to cut you off there. Another piece that's interesting with Thomasville is you know, when you come and you do something like this, especially a big a deal as, you know, PLL and then AMS, both products, is that resistance to change, right? It takes some time. That can be rough, and Thomasville handled that, you know, really well. They had a lot of people in place, you know, key champions that helped push that through. And I'm thinking specifically, I won't mention the name, but you guys, Duane and Eve, you can mention it if you want. But when we started PLL, he kicking and screaming into using Cityworks. He did not want to use it. And by the time I got back there for the third time to implement the next piece, he's actually walking through telling everybody, hey, you've got to use this system. I can't live without it. Here's everything you can do with it. And so I always kind of use that on my other projects when I tell that little story for Thomasville, because it's, you know, they can manage that really well, and Thomasville did that. So
yeah, people change, resistance to change is really common, and it just underscores this growth, right? This maturity curve and being adaptable and so forth. So Eve, one thing about, you mentioned 311, and I know there was a flooding event on July 4th, right? So we ring in Independence Day and there's a flood, and that was like another moment of learning for the organization. Walk through that and how that kind of changed some of the culture in just how citizens were engaging you guys with that particular event.
Thomasville is a relatively small town, and we have, lots of amenities from the government perspective as well as from a city. So, it's very easy to pick up the phone and call someone. And so that's what was happening with our flooding. Public Works were getting calls about flooding. Our utility response center, which is a 24-hour center that Drew manages, was getting phone calls after hours. And then the civil engineering department where I work was getting calls about flooding. And my boss, the city engineer, was getting emails from people about flooding reports. And so, they started popping up on Cityworks, and we saw them with Cityworks that Public Works was handling them. And then we started adding the calls we got in civil engineering and realized we don't have a flooding work order. Like, what do we do? This, we can't call it civil engineering other. And so we brought everyone together, and we decided that Public Works would be the first line of defense for any flooding. And, like any storm system in any city, significant storm events just can't handle all the water. That's kind of what happened in a lot of areas on 4th of July. But if Public Works needed civil engineering to get involved, they would route the work order to us. And so we were able to kind of see that very quickly with Cityworks. I don't think we would have been able to see that otherwise, because we would have just been working independently, kind of in silos otherwise. So I thought that Cityworks provided us a great, again, we like the organizational picture it provides. It's one place where we put all our information. It's one place where we can see all the communications that has occurred between customers or at locations. And so, now we have a better business process in place to address flooding and help citizens.
Well, and it's just as we've been talking about, until you go through an event like that, it's hard to know what you don't know, right, until you know it. And so previously, getting requests and notifications through multiple departments, and now having a system, GIS, ArcGIS, and Cityworks that you can consolidate around, that's just really one of our goals as a company. So it's really rewarding for us to hear stories like that, because, at the end of the day, one of our goals is to create resilient cities, that can withstand some of these, natural disaster events that happen and so forth. So Matt Ponder, you, customer success manager, I want to bring you in on this because you get really close to the customers as they go out. Give me a couple things that surprise you about Thomasville, just, and whatever you think. Give us some feedback about how, your interaction with Thomasville.
Sure. So I've actually been to the city of Thomasville twice over the past 2 years, and just the city itself. I mean, I'm impressed with how well done the downtown area is, the level of service that it provides for its citizens, and I think that probably helps, in the vision that Eve and Duane and everybody have for growing Cityworks, is that the citizens will expect a certain amount of service provided to them, and that probably gives y'all a little bit of incentive and push to continue to develop the system and to evolve the system to better serve your citizens. And I think the approach that you guys have taken with the internal committee, with the SMEs, with Duane and Eve and Drew kind of being the internal subject matter experts on Cityworks and pushing other departments to adapt and to evolve with their usage of the system has been really, really exciting to see, and how that has evolved over the the course of the 2 years that I've worked with you guys.
So Duane, what do you think? Right, so we show this diagram a lot, but are you guys, how is this, are you guys organized like this, or there's some deviation maybe, but it does sound like you guys, Cityworks isn't just an afterthought, it's something that you guys have strategically, plan and manage around.
When we first, years ago, when we were first looking for a solution for our permitting, land use and licensing and our asset management, we brought together a cross section of the entire city, even some people we thought that would never even touch the software, somebody like from Main Street and downtown. But we tend to do that with our cities, that we bring everybody in because we know that everybody has something to it. And since doing that, we realized, of course, that the Main Street people do have a say in how this software develops and what it can do for them. And so this graphic here is really good because it kind of shows that you really need to bring everybody in to the conversation, to start building those champions early, to letting them know how the software could benefit them in the long run in their business flows. And coming from the GIS perspective, that with it being a GIS-centric type solution, analytics is one of my big areas that I'm very interested in and love doing. And in the past, if we had somebody said, need to analyze X, Y, Z, I might have to go to 5 different departments, 5 different sources, get access to their F drives and their internal drives, and get all this data, bring it together into my GIS in order to start doing analysis. Now with Cityworks, most of that analysis is all in one location. So using URL, a URL and such, we can get that information out as a map service, bring it into ArcGIS Online, start creating dashboards. The other day I built one, and like within 3 hours I had a pretty complicated dashboard because it was just easy to do my save search, bring the map service out, bring in ArcGIS Online, and go at it. So I think with that all together, and looking at this graphic here, it really shows that totality of an organization having the input on the success of Cityworks being implemented.
Yeah, well, and it's just credit to you guys, to your team, your staff around, all around the city, and your end users. And that's something that we see, just in how you guys engage us and share your information, or you're excited about just things that are happening in your city, and how Cityworks is a part of that to make it, more efficient and resilient. And so, we're going on here. We're going to wrap up the episode. I wish we could talk for another, hour about just different nuances in the project and how it's going, but I just want to thank Eve and Duane and Ryan and Matt for joining me on the discussion today. And then we'll hand it back to Cindy to take us home.
That was awesome, you guys. Thanks for that conversation. So that does it for episode 4. We hope you enjoyed learning more about the success of City of Thomasville and how their guided implementation services led to continuous improvement. In other words, start with the end in mind, set your goals, and just start. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe and well until next time.